Hello and welcome, my friends, to the Zenpreneur podcast. This is your host, Mario Lanzarotti, and today I have a new exciting guest. His name is Aaron Markham. He holds a Master of Applied Positive Psychology from the University of Pennsylvania, where he studied under the infamous Dr. Martin Seligman, father of the field of positive psychology. For 20 years, he successfully scaled businesses and is the recipient of top industry awards recognizing his leadership, vision, and service. He has been a sought-after national speaker since 2006. I was still in school that time, and enjoys empowering entrepreneurs to make positive changes in their personal and professional lives. That's my kind of magic. I'm so excited to talk about this. And he's got something new coming out. His book, EntreThrive, The Entrepreneur's 8 Laws for Eliminating Unhealthy Stress, Flourishing Personally, and Creating the Good Life. It will be released January 2024, and we are excited to dive into the content of that book and the story. My friend, welcome to the show.
Oh, so good to be here, Mario. I've been looking forward to it. Thank you for having me on.
It's an absolute honor. Aaron, before we dive into your book and the power of positive psychology and why that is so important for entrepreneurs listening in today, I want to know what got the man, Aaron, to the point where he decided to make positive psychology a part of his life.
Yeah, that's a good question. Like many entrepreneurs, I started with nothing, with very little. My first entrepreneurial journey was I actually started a home care agency back in 2002 when I started, and had very little to my name. And I put so much into that. We call it in positive psychology obsessive passion. I was a little bit obsessive about making that successful, and experience a lot of the things I know many entrepreneurs experience. Where I was burning the candle at both ends. I was coming home at the time. I had three, and then later four kids during that journey. Yeah, I was coming home, eating with my family, and then going back to the office till 1 or 2 in the morning, right? And just that was my journey there, and learned over time. I started putting systems and processes in place to help kind of handle that. But that was kind of when I think about my journey to positive psychology. It kind of started there as I was trying to get a hold of my own business and grow it and scale it. I ended up selling that company to a public company, and then eventually started my second company. You would have thought that I would have learned from my previous experience, but I started in a very similar fashion. This time I had more income, more money to put into it, but I was still trying to do it all. I had that obsessive passion. We have this obsessive passion versus harmonious passion. I was certainly on the obsessive passion side of it, where I was burning relationships, and was not present with my family as much as I should. And I hit that wall in 2016, where I was, my health had taken a toll. In really 2015, I started recognizing it and started making some health life changes. But in 2016, I went all in with, in the book, I call it Entre Vigor. I went all in with like investing into my vigor, into my vitality, and also into my business. I started creating systems. I found, I don't know if you're familiar with the EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating System. We found that system, started implementing it in our business. But then on my personal side, I started really investing into education. And that's where I found positive psychology, is when I hit that ceiling personally and professionally. I read that The Happiness Advantage by Sean Acor was my first kind of introduction into positive psychology. And then as I got into that and studied some of Martin Seligman's work, found the positive psychology program map. And it has been, an incredible journey. I ended up exiting that second company. But if you look at that 2016, and when I really started investing in myself, the hockey stick growth, and investing in my business properly and getting the right people, it was like that hockey stick in a sense, to where my business grew, I grew, And because of that, I was so fascinated by that trajectory that I wanted to learn more. And that's when I got into later on, got into the master program over at UPenn. And I've been all in, kind of feel like this is my calling in helping other entrepreneurs flourish and find that thriving that I found back then. So
Yeah. I want to, before we dive deeper into positive psychology, you said that you had two experiences of growing and scaling businesses. And the second time around, you still didn't quite learn the lesson and you were, dancing with burnout from what I heard. And since you somebody
yes.
talks about psychology, I'm wondering, have you explored what was it inside of you that made you go down that path of what you call obsessive passion?
Yeah, I think that as many entrepreneurs deal with um, this kind of not just upset, we're passionate and we talk about you need to follow your passion, you need to do what you're passionate about. I was following my passion, back then. I loved, so I was a leader in the home health, home care space. I created a incredible company that scaled to 8, 9 figure type revenues. But so all that was going for me. I was super passionate about what I was doing and the impact I was having. But the lie of the either or, I talk about this in the book, is that I felt like I had to, in order for me to succeed as an entrepreneur, I had to be all in with my business. And that my personal life would come along at some point, right? We just delay the personal flourishing so that we can flourish professionally. And so I was all in with my business and getting that scaled and moving that forward while not being there and present with my the people who mattered the most to me. I put them off saying that'll come, right? That'll eventually catch up with me in my professional life if I just continue to grind it out. And that's the obsessiveness. Like you get so obsessive with that passion. You can be obsessive with a calling. Like there's times like right now I feel called. Like this book, even in writing this book, there were moments of that obsessive passion I had to check myself against and say, wait a second, I'm doing exactly what I'm trying to educate people not to do. We all kind of fall into that when we feel called or we find that purpose, we can go all in with that. And that lie of the either or is like, either I can flourish personally or I can flourish professionally. And unfortunately, most entrepreneurs pick the latter, right? They're going to flourish professionally and feel like the personally will just catch up with it.
Yeah. What was it about your past that created this obsessive drive, this obsessive, I gotta be all in, I gotta grind it out in my business? What did you ever explore
Yeah,
that?
I did. In fact, I explored it deeply. And I think that the driver of that can evolve as you grow as an entrepreneur. So early in, like aspiring entrepreneurs and those who are early in the journey, for me, it was the validation from others, even
Mm,
mentors, that I wanted to show people that I could do it, right? It was more of an external kind of obsession. Like I wanted to feel okay. I wanted to feel like I'd made the right choice leaving corporate America, and I wanted to prove to people that I could be successful. And so that obsession was more of an external driver.
yeah.
Now, when I like with this book and with my other businesses, I have other businesses I'm currently involved in right now. Is that obsession is more coming from the internal factor of I feel called. I feel like I want to help people. Like even you can become obsessive about helping other people while neglecting your own personal flourishing, whether it is in your health or in the way you are engaging your most deepest connections, not being present with them. So that's what the evaluation is. I recognize this is early on. That was an external driver. Now it's a lot of it's internal, and you have to balance it out. So making sure that you're creating that space right,
Mm.
for other things, other passions that you can get involved with. And in 2016, one of the things that I decided to go all in with that was outside of my business, I got into cycling, into biking, into my health. And that year, this is my personality, right? When I go all in, I'm all in. And I ordered my bike. It was April. I ordered my road bike. And the same day I ordered my road bike, I signed up for a 200-mile one-day bike race that was going to take place 5 months later.
Wow.
So I was like, that's a little bit obsessive, right? I've learned since that was a little bit nuts. I ended up finishing it, but it was a crazy summer. But but the healthy thing about that is it wasn't just my business that I was passionate about. I found other passions, and I think for entrepreneurs, we need to check ourselves and make sure that we're not living that lie of the either or.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a
Yeah.
powerful story. And I think a lot of people will be able to relate to that. Personally, I myself totally relate to it. This need to prove myself, this need to be the best son, and for my family, for my
Yeah.
parents, make them proud, and show and prove other people wrong that have hurt me in the past, that told me that you'll never be able
Amen.
to make it. That created this, yeah, just like you said, this obsessiveness, this sense of like, no matter what it takes, I'm going to make it. And that led
Yes.
me to just looking straight ahead and forgetting about
Mm.
relationships, forgetting about my health, and forgetting
Yeah.
about what really matters. And so, at what point did you have that wake up call where you decided to say, it's enough? This is not a healthy way of running and growing a business. Something needs to shift.
Yeah, it was in that 2015, 2016 point in my life back then that my business had plateaued, and and no matter how much effort and work I was putting into it, it was plateauing. And honestly, my wife and my kids, was recognizing certain things in not just behaviors in like some of my children, but in most of my relationships. I could not really at the time say I had dialed in any really great relationship.
Mhm.
They all seemed to be suffering around me, and it was a wake up call for me to say, this is, when I said enough is enough. And in fact, I had these back in when I had my first business. I was part of the Michael Gerber's E-Myth mastery group. And at the time, he called it a primary aim. I've evolved it since and added some more to it, but they were my guiding truths. And in 2016, I had these guiding truths. And over the period of my entrepreneurial journey, they have grounded me. In 2010, I had an experience where I was trying to hit a deadline, and I was feeling so stressed out. I was sleeping under my desk. I talk about it in the book, try to hit this deadline. And I saw these guiding truths. They've been on my wall in my office in town for years, and reminded me of what I was doing. And so I kind of reconnected with those guiding truths in 2016. My mind is at peace is one of my guiding truths. My life is filled with abundance. My family receives my time is another guiding truth of mine. My hands provide service is another guiding truth. And
Mm.
so these guiding truths have kind of helped kind of ground me again. And I just kind of reconnected with those. And another guiding truth, my body is in good health. And at the time, it was not in good health. I was about 20, 25 pounds heavier than I am right now.
Mm.
And so it was just that wake up call, reconnecting with those guiding truths that I had created years earlier. And that just spurred me. And it's really been since that, I look at that trajectory since, and it's been inspiring for myself, right? For me to look back and say, wow, I 10x'd my life. I don't know if you're familiar with the 10x is easier than 2x. Dan Sullivan. Dan's a Dan coaches me, and he's really taught me. I'm in his group of entrepreneurs that we get to sit down with Dan every quarter, and he's really taught me that your business should not run your life, right? It should not control your life. Your business is there to serve you and your life and your lifestyle. So, and I'm learning that, and I've learned that through that course of that time. So,
Yeah. That's
yeah,
a very powerful message. And so you're going through that transition, you have this wake up call, you're sleeping under the desk to meet a deadline, and then remember you remember these guiding truths, which I absolutely love. I'm right there with you. I call it guiding principles. I have
yeah,
something similar. And so
yeah,
that's essentially like a blueprint that you are creating for yourself to, yeah, to bring to life something different, a new possibility for being. And so as you move through that, at what point does positive psychology show up for you, and how did it begin to impact your life?
yeah. So I went through the master's program at UPenn, which is the #1 program in the world in positive psychology in 2021. But I really found that program in 2017 after reading that book, The Happiness Advantage by Sean Achor. And and I'd already been on this journey, right? 2015, 2016 on this personal journey, but I didn't really find positive psychology until 2017. But I was so fascinated with positive psychology when I read that book, and then I started reading and studying Martin Seligman's work, who's been a great mentor of mine, is that positive psychology isn't about being happy all the time, right? It's the science of well-being. It's the science of trying to figure out why some people thrive and why some people don't. And what fascinated and what kind of was why I gravitated to it is the world of psychology before that, like behavioral psychology and therapy and all those are so reactive.
Hmm.
They wait till you have a problem. Positive psychology is more of a proactive. It's it's for anyone who wants to live a better life. And we call it, in positive psychology, the first positive psychologist really, if you pull back all the layers, is really Aristotle, the great Stoic. When he coined the term the good life and eudaimonia and these kinds of virtuous way of living a virtuous life. The good life is the complete life. Is that all of those things really resonated with me because I wanted to be proactive in the way I not only cared for myself, but the way I helped others and helped others create the good life for themselves. And then because I had been working with entrepreneurs in my business, I coached a lot in the healthcare space, coached a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of clients of ours. I became very fascinated about not just positive psychology, but how could it impact an entrepreneur's journey in helping
Yeah.
them live a better life and create the good life, and not live the lie of the either or, that they could really flourish in both personal and professional lives. So that was the journey. Positive psychology is the science of well-being. Really, if you were to summarize, as far as I'm concerned, it's the evidence-based science of well-being, going beyond just self-help. Right? Here's some real research that has been done, and it's amazing. People don't understand how much incredible research has been done in this field by so many amazing people, Barbara Fredrickson, Marty, so many people that have
Yeah.
done, Angela Duckworth, so
What would you say are, if you could maybe bring it down to like 3 to 5 direct results in your entrepreneurial journey that you got from applying the principles you learned in positive psychology?
yeah, I love that question. So the obvious one, the one that was the easiest for me to measure is the financial success. I truly believe that when an entrepreneur is thriving personally, they're showing up in such a great positive way professionally. And I just started showing up better professionally and more clear, more of what I wanted, and tying my own core values in my business to my guiding truths. And so I had kind of direction and compass. When I found positive psychology in 2017 and really started like focusing on my own leadership and my own interaction with my team members, and how I was showing up at work was a direct reflection, of the financial results. Frankly, we were seeing some positive things, and I just became a much better leader. And you can ask any of my leadership team members back then; they could pinpoint that period of time where Aaron really started showing up, in his business, and really became the leader that I've always wanted to be, in business. And so that's more of the more obvious things. On the personal side, I remember when I was going through the master program at UPenn and I was learning all these important principles. I would have considered still, even at that point, sometimes was a reactive person. I am a passionate person, so sometimes I would react to my kids. And my older daughters, who are in college now, made the comment that, "Dad, you're different.
Hmm.
You just are just different in a good way, right?" They're like, "Dad, we just have noticed a difference." My mom made that comment. My wife, of course, made comments like that. They saw me differently. They saw me showing up. And in my extended relationships with even with family members who are struggling, that I was actually concerned about them and showing up for them. And so, relationships in general, and then I saw the financial results from it because I was a different person, became a different person through the process. And I feel so fortunate that I was deep diving into this wonderful field and learning so much about how to help others, that in the process I was helping myself. So I don't know if that was two or three things. And there's the connections I've made through that field have been phenomenal. The mentors that I've been able to connect with that have taught me so much.
Yeah.
Those are all key results.
Yeah. I'm right there with you, and I support fully what you said. My personal experience definitely is a testimony to that, and the thousands of people that I've worked with, entrepreneurs that I've worked with all over the world, many of the principles from positive psychology, I'm sure I haven't studied it, are
Hmm.
very along the lines of what I use. And so I also want you to talk more about this either or. You touched base on it earlier, but can you go
Hmm.
more in depth into this lie that you see that's being pushed out there in the entrepreneurial world, that it's either this
Yeah.
or that?
Yeah. Yeah, and a lot of this is in our subconscious. We're living this lie, and for the entrepreneur, specifically, and really, that the principle is connected to the entrepreneur more than anybody, because we live this lie to the extreme. I talk about that obsessive passion
Yeah.
and how I was going all in on my businesses, and how we get pulled so far to the, let's say professionalism is on the right hand side here. We get so pulled to the right because we're obsessing over this, that we live this lie that if I don't put everything into my business and thrive professionally and get my business to where it needs to be, which is going to require late nights, weekends, all of me, that eventually my personal life will catch up. That's the lie, really, of the either or, is that we typically choose the professional side, believing that once we get that taken care of, which is always in an entrepreneur's journey, we're always working hard, right? We're always putting everything we can into whatever venture. Even if we have all the right who's in our life and all the right people, we're still over here often and can be caught over here and neglecting the personal flourishing. So the lie of the either or is we believe that we can either thrive professionally or we can thrive personally, and we can't have both.
Yeah.
But
So
I'm here to
I
say
want to
you
ask
can
you,
have both.
I want to ask you something, because
Yeah.
uh, I have observed something and I have my own theory about this. And that is, what I see is that entrepreneurs go down the path of naturally prioritizing the professional path because they're entrepreneurs. But the
Yep.
reason they do that is because actually they want all the benefits from the personal path. So if we go back to what you said earlier in terms of proving their worth, is like they want that human connection. They want a happy marriage or relationship, right? They want the positive feelings. They want that sense of peace. I remember just yesterday I was coaching a client, and he was talking about, like, I want to hit them, I want to make the money, I want to get to 50K per month. And it's like, okay. And then we did the 5 whys, and he went down further, further, further. And it's like, at the end of the goal was he wants peace. So I
Yeah.
said, I want you to look at that. It's like, what you're chasing is money. But the reason
Yeah.
you're chasing is because you think it will give you peace. Do you see
Yeah.
that? And he's like, oh my
Yeah.
God, what? And
That's
so,
powerful.
isn't it ironic that the thing we want is covered in the professional path, rather than us going straight for that, rather than going straight
Yeah.
for the honeypot? We're like, let me just climb over all these hoops here, left and right, left and right.
Yeah.
And what I've seen personally with myself and with clients, is that the professional path, as strange as it may sound, is a lot easier than the personal path. I recall the amount of times where I have personally avoided having difficult conversations in my personal life, where I said, yeah, okay, I know I need to talk to this person, but it's so uncomfortable. I know I need to talk
Hmm.
about to my mother about this one topic that I had 5 years ago that I recognized that's still haunting me today. But it's like, not today, not today. So,
Hmm.
and then what did I
Yeah.
say? I'm busy. I don't have the time. I got to make sure that we have enough money. And so I use that as an excuse, as a protection, really, mechanism for myself to say later. Why? Because I was
Hmm.
shit scared to actually go for the things that I want the most.
Yeah. Oh, so well said, Mario. That's exactly right. We put off thinking that that will come later, right? And that is truly, I really believe, and I'm right there with you, that most entrepreneurs, when they build, and I love how you did that with your client, is when they get down to really why they're doing it, it's really personally related. They want that lifestyle. They want their families to benefit. They want all
Right.
those things. And yet so they'll grind it out and burn out often. And that's my biggest concern, especially early on with entrepreneurs, and where this book kind of hits those entrepreneurs who hit maybe like a couple $1 million in revenue, and they're still grinding it out, and they can still burn out and throw in the keys sometimes because they've just done it for so long now, and they hit these plateaus. And I kind of present myself in my book as the guide, because I've made plenty of mistakes, and I hit that.
Yeah.
And I finally figured out that actually, this is again back in 2015, 16, that if I focus a little bit more on the personal flourishing side, and I actually have those difficult conversations that I was afraid, and I love how you put that, is I started investing in my relationships. I started investing in my health, that the professional side actually came along faster than I ever could imagine. Like
Exactly.
it was it was so the contrast was blew my mind. And that's what really, and you really kind of through this process of asking these great questions, is that yeah, it was really that period of time that I realized that I can't live this lie anymore. I've got to, why am I doing this? Here I am in my, you know, third or whatever company that I've grown, and it's generating great revenue, and I'm still grinding it out,
Yeah.
and I'm still like thinking I'm just not. And that's the other thing, that it's a real dangerous trap where we say, okay, if we just get to this point, then I'll be okay. Then I'll invest into my personal flourishing side. And that was me. I was constantly putting that off, saying, I've got to get here. Oh, now it's $5 million in revenue I've got to get to, now it's 10, or whatever that goal is. You just end up putting off that personal flourishing side. And I'm telling people, don't wait. Like, Like, go all in with that now. Your business will be there. You need to continue to invest in that, but it'll show up better when you're investing in your personal flourishing. So
Yeah. It's so interesting because I remember when I was running my first company in New York City, and we sold it in 2019. We had such a grandiose vision for this business, like you always have when you start out. Like we're gonna be
yeah.
industry leader. We're gonna disrupt everything. We're gonna revolutionize how custom made shoes are sold, and we had
Mm,
success for sure. And what I realized reflecting back is there were so many times where I showed up small, whether it was in sales meetings, whether it was talking to investors, whether it was in conversations with my business partner. I was working 7 days per week, 7 days. 7 days. I was just
hmm
going and going and going. And all I was focused on was how can I add more hours? And
yeah.
in and then I asked myself, when I shifted towards my coaching business and my speaking business, what was it inside of me that made me do that? Because I had already read the books, I had listened to the
Yeah.
podcast, I had gone
Yeah.
to the seminars. I knew it, or at least I told myself I knew it
Yeah.
conceptually, but I wasn't living it, I wasn't embodying it. And every time I faced a personal conflict in my life, every time I healed some sort of a past trauma, I remember when I addressed this strong need to prove myself, my fear of charging more money actually went down, and I started signing up higher ticket clients. Why?
hmm
Because I wasn't so focused on proving myself, but I shifted to I know my worth. I don't need to
Yeah.
prove it
There you
to you. I
go.
know who I
There you
am.
go.
I don't need to put up a
Yeah.
show. I don't need to, okay, you're going to get this and this and this. And yeah, if you don't want, how about this? And like this insecurity that comes through from a man who's like, he's talking more than he should. It's like, what is that? And it just became this sense of certainty, this sense of authority, this leadership where I'd say, hey, if you want to work with me, these are my rates.
Love
And
it. Yeah.
no sweating, no like no stumbling over my words. And people were like, yeah, great, let's do it. And it was because I brought that sense of authority into the space in a safe and healthy way that now I charge more money. I can work with less people, with fewer clients, which allows me to take more time off if I want to. I can do it, no problem. And it all came from doing the inner work. So to your point, making the personal path, the personal healing, a priority, just pays off so much in the business.
It does. And it creates confidence, like protecting your confidence. Like when you're investing in yourself, and I love your story about charging more rates because that's all ties to your confidence. Because
Yes.
as we invest and we do that inner work, our confidence grows and our worth grows. We feel more valued and we feel more like we belong. In positive psychology, we use this term often, is that that all people matter, or that we matter, and that we belong. The
Yeah.
famous positive psychologist Chris Peterson kind of coined that term, is all people matter. And I think that's so important. But then as you're building and you're doing that inner work, you find that you do matter, you are worth, you do provide value in business. And so I want entrepreneurs to understand the connection. These are not siloed areas, our personal and professional lives. They're not like two separate parts of the other, right? They're actually intertwined.
Yeah.
There's no way to separate them in most cases. I mean, yes, there's some separation in our time and when we come home and eat with our family and all those things, but when it comes to our mindset and what's going on in here, they're intertwined with one another. We're I talk about in the book, and Joe Dispenza's work is powerful in this regard. You probably know Joe's work, but about mind and body alignment. No longer am I using the word connection, right? It's about aligning mind and body because they're already connected. So we need to align it, and our minds and I also use this term, coined the term, the good life mindset, is like creating the good life is so much in here, and also externally in how we show up with our relationships and so forth. But it all starts here, and
Yeah.
creating that complete life in here, and being okay with, like, going back to your example of having the confidence to charge more and be more picky about who you're working with. That's a mindset of you creating the good life for yourself, um, that feels professionally, but what did that do for you personally, right? It's significant impact on you personally. You now have the freedom and the time to take personal time and to be with those you love. I mean, why else are we in business if we can't do that? What's the
Mm,
point? I mean, yes, you might be serving others and providing a great service, but if you're suffering, to me, that's just, I think the ROI on that is very much diminished at that point.
yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
I love that. And your book is called EntreThrive, and it's coming out
hmm
January 22nd, 2023. So we got about 3 months.
2024.
2024. Sorry, of course, I'm still
Yeah.
in 2023. So
That's right.
tell me about the book. I know you talk
Uh-huh.
about 8 laws. I'd love to
hmm
hear about them. If you can
Yeah.
do maybe like a rundown on them, and
Yeah.
maybe
Real quick. Yeah.
why don't you tell us what are like your top 3 laws?
Yeah. Yeah. So I sandwich the laws. I call it my top three. My top two are really easy, because clarity is the first law. It's where I
Hmm.
talk about the guiding truths. I also talk about this concept called the breakaway. And the breakaway comes from I mentioned I was in cycling, the Tour de France. When the riders want to break away from the pack, they've got to change. They've got to do something different, right? They have, I call it a breakaway narrative, is that you've got to have this new story you're telling yourself, this new narrative, and get clear on what you're breaking away from, whether it's your former self. And our best breakaways are done when we're with the people we love that are helping us with that breakaway. So that entre clarity is a powerful, like we need to get clear on what we want and not apologize for what we want. Like, so often we get in that trap of apologizing for, even if it's money related. We're like, we want to justify to other people why we want what we want. I learned that from Dan Sullivan. He never apologizes for what he wants, and it's just been a powerful concept in my life. And so entre clarity, super powerful law. I go into more. I talk about the sleeping under my desk and those guiding truths in there, and have some other world type examples. And then so that's, to me, that's the cornerstone law. The keystone law that kind of holds everything together is the last law, and that's entre agency. And this law is really inspired by Dr. Martin Seligman, my professor and mentor in positive psychology. I have so many mentors, though, not just Marty in that space, but Marty has been doing a lot of work on agency and the power of agency and the history of agency. And I've applied that in that law to the entrepreneur. And that there's 3 pillars to agency for an entrepreneur. And Marty actually talks about this for anybody, is that you first have to have this, what in positive psychology we use the term self-efficacy. And self-efficacy simply means that I have the belief, the faith in myself that I can figure it out. That's that confidence that we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
That's the first law or the first pillar of agency. If you don't believe that, hard to act freely, hard to act, to make good choices as an entrepreneur. The second one is optimism. Marty is one of the most well-known. He wrote the book Learned Optimism. He's done so much research in this space and about this optimistic, kind of mindset, and that An optimist explanatory style is, again, positive psychology term, but that simply means that an optimist, when they look at challenges or setbacks, they look at challenges and setbacks as temporary. A pessimist will look at those same setbacks as permanent, right? And so entrepreneurs, every time we have so many uncertainties, that those uncertainties, if we're not optimistically going about them, right, and looking at that, every uncertainty should be looked at a temporary situation and how we can learn from it and how we can
Mm.
overcome it. And the third pillar to entre agency is imagination, and which is key for an entrepreneur. And if those three things are taken away, our agency is taken away. Like we aren't able to act freely for ourselves. And in history, there's times in history like the Dark Ages and other things where those were taken away from the people, and their ability to act freely was also taken away. And so as an entrepreneur, always questioning, where are those three areas in my own life so that I can really act freely. And the other part of agency is like avoiding blame, not being the victim, choosing to have that extreme ownership that my mistakes as an entrepreneur are my mistakes and my failures. And I'm going to learn. I got to choose to learn from my failure, because a failure is only a failure if we don't learn from it. Then once we learn from it and we grow from it, is it really a failure at that point? Right. So that agency is important. And then I would say the third, if I were to kind of rate all these laws, so is that probably the second law, and that's EntreCreate. Like if an entrepreneur is not creating and they're not making the space to create, and they're working in their business and that obsessive passion and keeping the lights on all the time, then they will burn. Not and burnout's kind of an overused term sometimes. Not only will they burn out, but their passion just fizzles, right? And they're just a robot in their business. We have to create space. And so I have this concept called Deep Thrive sessions. And I do this every week now, where I go into a 2 or 3 hour Deep Thrive session, sometimes more than once a week, where it's a personal creation space. Sometimes I connect it to my business, but often it's planning my breakaways personally, planning, my future, and I'm just going all in. It starts with meditation. It's really important to me. Uh, I use this sky meditation, which is I don't know if you're familiar with that, but um, the Art of Living Center, teaches this, and I went and got trained on this, and it's a breathing meditation, and it helps me kind of get focused. So I get that focus in that Deep Thrive session, and I just kind of go all in on whatever I want to create. But even outside of that, as entrepreneurs, problem solving is creating, helping your team solve their own problems, getting really creative with 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 that, and the ideas, like being able to generate ideas. And for entrepreneurs, we have to come up with 20 ideas to get to any like 2 or 3 good ideas, right? So we have to be generating a whole bunch, and if we're not creating the space for that, we're not thriving. So creation is really important. I talk about EntreGrid as another law, entre habits, entre faith, and entre vigor are the other laws of the 8 laws. So
Talk to me about faith, because this is a topic that is delicate for many, because they're like, I don't believe in
yeah,
anything. I don't want to believe in anything.
yeah,
They're like, oh, religion. I'm not really a religious person because I grew up in a religious household or environment, and that was traumatic, right? And so I want to start with a question of, why is it beneficial for an entrepreneur to have faith?
yeah. Faith, and I lay this out in the book, is before if we're struggling, or we may not have faith in a transcendence, right? Or we may not believe that. Why not go back a little bit further? I mentioned this term self-efficacy, which ties to this. But
Mm-hmm.
have faith in, like, learn to have faith in yourself and your abilities and your ability to work things out. That's kind of, to me, the crawl part of faith. Like crawl, walk, run, fly is a term that Martin Luther King, his great quote. He says, if you can't fly, then run. If you can't run, then walk. If you can't walk, then crawl. But whatever you do, keep moving forward. And to me, that's faith, right? We have to start somewhere, and let's start with ourselves. Like, let's start building our confidence and faith in ourselves. And I think the second, the walk part of faith is giving our trust to others. I have this part of my book, and that I talk about the importance of being willing to giving trust to those people that you're connected with, and not wait for them to earn it. Because if you wait every time for people to earn it, then that's not putting a lot of faith in them. Sometimes faith requires us to actually move forward, even though we may not have all the answers or know
Yeah.
that person entirely. Then the
Yeah.
third, the run part, is the faith in the transcendent, in God. I personally, I'm a Christian. My faith in Christ and faith in God is important, but I respect all faiths. And whether you now the difference, there is a difference obviously between, and maybe not obviously, some people don't separate it between religion and spirituality, right? And that a spiritual person can still have faith in God and in a higher power. And here's the connection with an entrepreneur that I think is pretty powerful, and with anybody, is that the science has shown, as I've done the research through positive psychology, there's been research done that a faith in a higher power, in the transcendent, actually is tied to greater well-being, greater happiness, greater flourishing. That because it's also tied to purpose and meaning.
Yeah.
Like when we have faith and we can give ourselves to God a little bit more and believe that there's something out there guiding us, then we don't put it all on ourselves again. Like it's this full circle. Like, yeah, we have to have faith in ourselves, but then if we also have faith in God, that burden can be lifted
Yeah.
somewhat, which has been truly the case in my life, is that I feel like I didn't carry this all by myself, and that there was a higher power out there guiding me to help others and to serve others and to put my full self into, put the love into my work in a way that maybe I couldn't have done on my own.
Yeah.
And so if you just look at the research, there's some powerful research out there that would back up the fact that we will thrive. In fact, I mentioned in the book some research, that there was a study done a few years ago specifically for entrepreneurs that tied their well-being and everything to greater faith in a higher power of God.
Yeah.
And so, but we've got to say, okay, where am I with my faith? Maybe you're not there with full faith in God. So where can you put your faith in? Because remember, faith is to move forward without having all the information.
Right.
As entrepreneurs, we do that a lot, right? We move forward. We may not have all the information, or we may not see the end, but we have faith that we do this and we take certain action, that it'll be a positive outcome. And
Yeah.
so whatever we can do to start that crawl, walk, run, fly. And the fly part is taking all three of those elements and bringing them all together.
Mm.
And if you have faith in yourself, faith in others, and faith in God, man, think about the power of that, right? That's a powerful place to be. But recognizing that many of us aren't there. There's times in my life where that third one was a real challenge for me.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Many points that you make, I love it, and I think it's so important to really understand this. And it made such a big difference in my life to embrace faith and to embrace God. And to me, God is a word. I'm not caught up on the word. To me, the
Hmm.
idea of God is a presence, is a truth,
Yeah.
is a knowing of, is an absolute truth. And to me, that is love. and it's a frequency that we can tap into, and you'll find it everywhere. To
Yeah.
your point, there's a quote. I don't know who said it. Maybe you know. The quote goes something along the lines of like, if you knew who walked beside you, you would never doubt yourself again.
Mm.
And it's
I've
so
heard of
true,
that, but I don't know who said that. Yeah. Powerful.
because the more you embrace, to your point of flying, the idea of there is a higher power, that means you embrace the idea that you are loved for who you are without having to do anything, without achieving anything. You're just loved. You are loved for the way you are, for who you are right now in your life. And it's not conditional. The more you do that, the less of a fear will be inside of you. The more fear you remove, the more stress you remove. That means your
Mm.
nervous system is more aligned. With an aligned nervous system, your immune system functions at its optimum. That means the gene expression is optimized. That means every part inside of you is doing the thing that it was designed by nature to do in the most harmonious way possible. So naturally, if you are a high performer, it's almost a must, in my opinion, to open yourself up to the idea that there may be something there. And for me, the
Yeah.
longest time in my life, religion held me back from embracing God, because I was like, I'm not on board with those ideas that there's a person in the sky who looks down upon me, and when I do X, the person will say, "Okay, I saw that. You have 10 minus points." Like, that to me just didn't resonate. I was like, you know what?
Yeah. Same.
Screw that.
Yeah.
I don't want it. Then I had a
Yeah.
visceral experience with plant medicine, with ayahuasca, where I just experienced this incredible sense of love, this feeling of being held no matter what, that no matter what I do in life, no matter where I end up, I will always be loved. It was so powerful that I was like, there's no way that there is not something that we call a higher power. I don't know what it
Yeah.
is, but it was the beginning for
Yeah.
me to open myself up. And I've never stopped opening myself up. Now I'm on a journey to embrace Christ consciousness, which to me is
Mm.
not tied to the church. It's the idea
Yeah.
that to embody the consciousness of the Christ, because that is
Mm.
the consciousness of love. And so
Yeah.
that gives me a whole blueprint to look at my life and to say, where am I not operating in love? And not operating in love is very simple to find. What or who
Yeah.
am I judging? And if I'm judging my mother for doing or saying X, Y, Z, I know that I'm disconnected from that frequency of love. So what do? Okay, I go through the processes that I have, and as I do that, I rise in consciousness. And as I rise in consciousness, I leave these lower states of consciousness that are about shame, guilt, fear, anger. And that means my way of feeling peace is not tied to once I hit X, once I make this amount of money, once I sell this thing. No, you know what? I'm on that journey. It will happen. I know it will happen. But you know what?
Yeah.
I don't care. I don't care. I'm living in bliss. And when I'm not living
Yeah.
in bliss, I close my eyes and I go within and I say, what's taking me away from bliss? What idea is my mind holding on to? What emotion is in my body? And I
I
go through the
love it.
process and I go through that. And the more I do it, the faster it happens. And then I can process things easier. And that's the whole secret, in my opinion, to operate from peace, or the way that you have talked about it today, is operating on that frequency of the good life, right? Of being able to create your life. So I really love what you've been sharing here today. And we, with an awareness of time, I have a few more questions that I want to ask you, but I'll give you another opportunity if there was anything that you wanted to add to what I just shared.
Yeah. Hard to add too much to that. That was powerful. I appreciate you sharing that. For me, my own faith journey. So going back to my guiding truths, one of my guiding truths is my heart belongs to Christ.
Yeah.
That's my eighth guiding truth. And I think that whether you are going to a church or not, is that you're that and again, if it's not Christian or whatever it is, I think that if you can align your truths or your purpose, your meaning to a higher power where you're not carrying that burden all the time, that you feel like there's more to life than just what you're experiencing, then I think there's some real power in that. It really does tie to well-being. I mean, me personally, I do go to church, and I get great peace from that. But
Yeah.
my journey involved with me recognizing that my purpose in doing so is in that guiding truth that it helps me get closer to Christ, and that regardless of anyone else in that church, then what they think of me doesn't even matter anymore. And that is that when we're trying to please God, and we're trying to and that's the person we're trying to please, he doesn't care how much money we earn, right? See, back in my early journey as an entrepreneur, I was so caught up in what people thought about me. I wanted to please my parents. I wanted to please, who are amazing people, and I just wanted them to be proud of me, or my in-laws, or just so many people in my life. And really, probably more important were some of my peers in business, other fellow entrepreneurs,
Yeah.
and that's so fleeting. That's so external and short-sighted and short-lived, but yet most of us fall in that trap. But when we say, okay, I'm here to just please one, and that's God, I think the whole paradigm changes for people. It
Yeah.
has for me. And it sounds like you're kind of have been on that journey for a while, where my purpose changes. That I'm not that because God doesn't care about money, doesn't care what he just cares about the difference I'm making in my own life and in the life of others. And to me, and the others also means my family. Like, that's not just people that I'm impacting in my business, though I do believe it's connected as well. If I'm providing for other families through this business, and that, to me, that's a God thing. Like, he wants me to provide for them. He wants, and so indirectly, yeah, he wants the money there, but it's not because he wants me to have a nice car or a nice house. He wants me to make impact. And that'll come. And he's not, to me, I also believe God is fine with that too. Like, if you can still make an impact and you can still do great things, then I also believe he's a God of, like, he loves everybody, and that he's not against those things as long as we have the right perspective in our lives. So anyway.
If you could spend an hour of your time with any person, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
Oof. An hour of, I would say, honestly, Christ for me, because I'm a Christian. That would be the person I would want to spend an hour of my time with. Like, I have so many questions. So,
What would be
you
one of
know,
the most burning questions you would ask?
this is probably, it's just being vulnerable. I'd say, what does the next life look like? Like, what can I expect? Being a future-driven entrepreneur is like, what can I expect? And maybe he'll probably give me a little insight into me personally, what I could expect. But he, that I would want to know was you know, what's the next life look like? Give me that vision. you know? So I'm sure
Typical.
it's amazing.
It's a typical entrepreneurial question. It's like, what do I have to look forward to?
Right.
Tell me about the future, right? That's where we're going. I love it.
Yeah, then
I love it.
that's probably, I don't know, but yeah.
Aaron, tell us where can we find you? What's the best way to connect with you? I know you
Yeah.
as we mentioned, your book is coming out. Is there people, can they pre-order? What does that look like?
Yeah, you can pre-order the Kindle right now. You go to EntreThrive.com, ENTRE thrive.com, and you can order that. And we also, I believe, you can put it in your show notes, is that we created a unique URL for your listeners. And we have a guide, it's called our EntreClarity Guide. where we break out how they can get to their own guiding truths, and then also a breakaway worksheet as part of that guide that they can actually create some of their own breakaways. We've gotten some wonderful feedback. We're actually in the process of using AI for our clarity exercises and some of our other exercises, which is pretty exciting. But right now it's just a PDF that they can download, and so it's a link, I believe, and it's on. You should have received that. Believe it's I think it's entrethrive.com/Zenpreneur. So
Amazing.
yeah, so they can go
Beautiful.
there, and then of course order the book. The pre-orders for the other copies will come in, I believe, in January. So
Well, I'm certainly excited to read the book myself. Aaron, you've been a great guest.
yeah,
Thank you so much
thank
for
you.
sharing your time, space, the wisdom with us today. I feel energized by this conversation. I know that my
Good.
listeners will do so as well. We're going to add all the links in the show notes. And again, thank you for being an amazing guest on the Zenpreneur podcast.
Been a pleasure. It's a lot of fun. Thank you.
Absolutely. And thank you for being a loyal listener to the show. And I will see you on the next episode.